And then eventually, kind of, again, it's counterproductive to the entire situation, which, okay, every time I think of the dentist, now I'm breathing very slowly and counting backwards from 10 or whatever it is that you've learned. All right, behavioral therapy, or continued here, we have aversive conditioning, so a relatively ineffective type of behavioral therapy that involves repeatedly pairing an aversive stimulus with the occurrence of an undesirable behavior or thoughts. There's this drug out there called Antabuse. So this is used in aversion therapy of alcoholism. So consuming alcohol while taking Antabuse produces bouts of extreme, highly unpleasant nausea where you just vomit all the time. So you're taking Antabuse, you have a sip of whatever, twisted tea, boom, throw up immediately. So they're using, one trial learning, which if you remember, that's Garcia. Aversive, it's throwing up after Taco Bell one time and never eating Taco Bell again. They're using that to stop alcoholism. It's not that great, doesn't work that well, but they do use it. So behavioral therapists are wary of using these techniques because of the harm it causes clients, because you shouldn't really be throwing up to cure something. Techniques based in operant conditioning. So this is punishment and reward. So we have shaping. If you remember, I think the example that I gave about shaping, how do you get a person to do something? You reward them for similarly completed tasks to the thing that you want. So if I want Johnny Susie to go down a giant slide, I will put Johnny Susie on the end of the slide, sit them there, and then give them a piece of candy because they're at the bottom of the slide. So if you're on the slide, you get rewarded. And then all of a sudden we move halfway up the slide. I take Johnny Susie up there, let him go. Boom. Johnny Susie goes down. I give him another piece of candy. It's like, okay, now get on the ladder. All right, get up the slide. Go, I'll give you a piece of candy for being on the ladder. And you reward these similarly, the similar tasks of the goal that you want completed. That's what shaping is. So this involves reinforcing successive approximation of the desired behaviors. So this is often used to teach appropriate behaviors to patients who are mentally disabled by autism, mental retardation, or severe mental illness. So positive and negative reinforcement increases the incidence of a desired behavior. Extinction is the absence of reinforcement. So if you end up using positive or negative reinforcement, which again is encouraging a particular behavior, and then you take away whatever the reinforcer is, extinction will begin. So the process of losing that learned behavior. So there's this thing called token economy. So a form of behavior, of BT, behavioral therapy, in which the therapeutic environment is structured to reward desired behaviors with tokens or points that may eventually be exchanged for tangible rewards. This happens in AA, NA, anything. You get little tokens for being a week sober, a month sober, years sober. I mean, my father-in-law, I went to his 30-year token ceremony. He's been sober for 30 years. It's crazy. And this is what it is. It's token economy. It's like, that, it's almost just like a 5-year-old and me saying, be a good boy today and I'll give you a piece of candy. The same principles there actually work in these situations as well. So contingency management, a more narrowly focused on a small number of specific behavior, a small number or specific behavior, and have been proven very effective in treating people who are dependent on a substance. So again, token economy, it works. It's amazing that it works, but it does. Comparing psychodynamic and humanistic therapies, so this is a good thing to study. I like putting these on here. They're in the book for review. Now we move to cognitive therapies. So again, cognitive meaning thinking, mental processes. So a group of psychotherapies based on the assumption that psychological problems are due to illogical patterns of thinking. Treatment techniques focus on recognizing and altering these unhealthy thinking patterns. So we have RET, which is rational emotive therapy. So this is a type of cognitive therapy developed by psychologist Albert Ellis that focuses on changing the client's irrational beliefs. So let's get into that a little bit. So in rational emotive therapy, psychological problems are explained by the ABC model. So the activating event, okay, so that's A. The person's beliefs, that's B. And then the event that causes the emotional consequences, C. So what does a therapist do? So step one, identify the core irrational beliefs that underlie personal distress. And then step two, the therapist would be there to, vigorously dispute the irrational beliefs. In doing so, rational emotive therapists tend to be very direct and even confrontational in why you're thinking that way. They're not going to call you stupid, but they might call that thought process stupid. You know what I mean? So they're confrontational. Be like, that's not true. What you're thinking is not reality. That's not what other people are thinking about you. All that kind of stuff. They would be confrontational about that. So from the client's viewpoint, step one must admit his or her irrational beliefs and accept the fact that those beliefs are irrational and unhealthy. And then step two, the client must radically change his or her way of interpreting and responding to stressful events. Which you'll see, cognitive behavioral therapy is a thing where you change your thinking, change your behavior. Albert Ellis founded cognitive psychotherapy called rational emotive therapy, which emphasizes recognizing and changing irrational beliefs. We're going to look at some irrational beliefs here in a second. So this became increasingly disappointed with the psychoanalytic approach of solving human problems. Believe you largely feel the way you think, which is pretty dead on about that. And then RET is based on the assumption that people are not disturbed by things, but rather than their view of things. So this is kind of some examples of irrational beliefs on the right. And then you have the ABC model of thinking. So you would see the common sense view. So A, the activating event. So example, you're passed over for a promotion at work. And then C, you're miserable and depressed. It just goes from A to C. Now, rational emotive therapy, ABC model, you're passed over for a promotion at work. And then B, I must be successful at everything I do, or I am a complete failure. I was not successful, so I'm a complete failure and worthless human being. C, you're miserable and depressed. So irrational beliefs here on the right, it is a dire necessity for you to be loved or approved by virtually everyone in your community. This is something that I struggled with for a very long time, that I had to make everybody like me, and I had to make decisions based on that all the time. And then I realized that me trying to make everybody else happy made me sad. And that probably didn't happen until I was like 26. Until I found out oh man, I shouldn't be catering to everybody's needs. Because once you start doing that, then people are like, oh hey, he'll do whatever he can for you. And then they start walking on your back. Don't like that. You must be thoroughly competent, adequate, and achieving in all possible respects, and you are to consider yourself worthwhile. Certain people are bad, wicked, or villainous, and they should be severely blamed and punished for their villainy. You should become extremely upset over other people's wrongdoings. It is awful and catastrophic when things are not the way you would very much like them to be. Human unhappiness is externally caused, and you have little or no ability to control your bad feelings and emotions. It is easier to avoid than to face difficulties and responsibilities. Avoiding difficulties whenever possible is more likely to lead to happiness than facing difficulties, which is so not true. You need to rely on someone stronger than yourself. Your past history is an all-important determinant of your present behavior. This is huge in people, where they think that their past has defined them, and they can never get out of it. And they feel guilty about something that happened in the past, and it is just this like weight that they carry around all the time. You should be extremely upset over other people's problems, and there is a single perfect solution to all human problems, and it is catastrophic if this perfect solution is not found. What's the solution? It's probably good sleep, honestly. All right, cognitive therapy. So cognitive therapy, so C-Team, developed by Aaron T. Beck, focuses on changing the client's unrealistic and maladaptive beliefs. So the therapist encourages the client to empirically test the accuracy of his or her assumptions and beliefs. Step 1, they would help the client learn to recognize and monitor the automatic thoughts that occur without conscious effort or control. Then the therapist helps the client learn how to empirically, which is to take in through the 5 senses, right, raw data, test the reality of the automatic thoughts that are so upsetting. To test the belief that I always say the wrong thing, the therapist might assign the person the task of initiating a conversation with 3 acquaintances and noting how often he or she actually said the wrong thing, which is not that often. But we have this weird thing in our mind where the rarity of the event actually causes us to think that it happens more often, and this hurts us, especially in situations like this. So Aaron Beck founded cognitive therapy, CT, psychotherapy, based on the assumption that depression and other psychological problems are caused by biased perceptions, distorted thinking, and inaccurate beliefs. Like Ellis, he believes that people think, or what people think, creates their moods and emotions. In contrast with Ellis' emphasis on irrational thinking, Beck believes that depression and other psychological problems are caused by distorted thinking and unrealistic beliefs. Beck discovered that depressed people have an extremely negative view of the past, present, and future through free association and dream analysis. So negative cognitive bias, consistently distorting their experiences in a negative way. I can't do anything right, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I can't hit. I hear that a lot in baseball. I can't hit, I suck at baseball. That's weird. Then how'd you get here? You know what I mean? And it's just unrealistic. It's not true. It doesn't match up with what really happened. So, cognitive biases and depression. We have arbitrary interference, drawing a negative conclusion when there is little or no evidence to support it. Selective abstraction, focusing on a single negative detail, taken out of context, ignoring the more important aspects of the situation. A lot of people do that one. So yeah, the example, Jacqueline's annual review. Her manager praises her job performance, but notes that she could be a little more confident when she deals with the customers over the phone. Jacqueline leaves her manager's office thinking that he is on the verge of firing her because of her poor telephone skills, which what really happened was constructive criticism, and it was taken way out of context. Overgeneralization, drawing a sweeping global conclusion based on an isolated incident and applying that conclusion to other unrelated areas of life. Magnification and minimization, so grossly overestimating the impact of a negative event and grossly underestimating the impact of positive events, so that small bad events are magnified but good large events are minimized. This is a thing that humans struggle with because we've evolved to do this. We've evolved to focus on the negative because it will help us survive longer. So we fight this. And then personalization, so taking responsibility, blaming oneself, or applying external events to oneself when there is no basis or evidence for making the connection. Then we have comparing cognitive therapies. So this is a good thing to study. So there's the difference between RET and CT, which can get confusing. So you really need to focus on the difference between these two things. Albert Ellis up top with rational emotive therapy, and then Aaron Beck the bottom with CT. So irrational beliefs with RET and unrealistic distorted perceptions for CT. Cognitive behavioral therapy. So we've talked about this a couple times. So therapy that integrates cognitive and behavioral techniques that is based on the assumption that thoughts, moods, and behaviors are interrelated. So along with challenging maladaptive beliefs and substituting more adaptive cognitions, the therapist uses behavior modification, shaping, reinforcement, all those learning principles that we've gone over before, and modeling to teach problem solving to change unhealthy behavior patterns. It's a pragmatic approach. They design an integrated treatment plan, utilizing techniques that are most appropriate for the specific problems. Has been used in the treatment of children, adolescents, and the elderly. Honestly, if you've ever had a problem before, that wasn't chemical based in your brain, and you've seeked out therapy, my guess is that CBT was probably at least talked about for you. This is the tried and true way of helping people get over irrational, unrealistic thinking and the behavior that follows it. So, all right, we're done for today. Yay.